A reading from the second letter to the Corinthians. Brothers and sisters, that I, Paul, might not become too elated because of the abundance of the revelations, a thorn in the flesh was given to me, an angel of Satan, to beat me, to keep me from being too elated. 3 times I begged the Lord about this, that it might leave me. But he said to me, "My grace is sufficient for you, for power is made perfect in weakness. I will rather boast most gladly of my weaknesses, in order that the power of Christ may dwell with me. Therefore, I am content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and constraints for the sake of Christ. For when I am weak, then I am strong." The word of the Lord.
Our second reading for this Sunday comes from the second letter of Paul to the Corinthians. We have been reflecting on the prophet's experience of faith in mission. We have just dwelt on the experience of Ezekiel. Ezekiel was sent by God to a rebellious people. He already expected, before even reaching the people, that these people would not listen to him. But Ezekiel was operating only on faith in God, and fidelity to his mission received from God. Now in St. Paul's experience, it is not just the exterior tests that he points to us. Of course, there were exterior tests. He talks about persecutions, difficulties, and all of that. But St. Paul, the prophet, the apostle, talks of another test, and it is his own weaknesses, his own liability. Now, what is this thorn in the flesh that St. Paul talks about in the second reading? We don't know really. It is a mysterious reference made by St. Paul to some weakness. Some people say it might have been some defect in speech. Some said that this probably was some inhibition or some possible hindrance to an effective mission. Whatever that might be, St. Paul was struggling with it. He was not only struggling with the people who were unwelcoming, people who rejected him, but he was also struggling with himself. Probably he could not reconcile the fact that he, weak as he is, limited as he is, sinful as he is, could be God's chosen apostle, the bearer of the good news of salvation. How could his weakness be the vehicle of such a noble mission, of such a noble message? And probably he was afraid that when people see him and recognize his weakness, they might not accept the good news that comes from him. This is a real concern. And if you are weak in heart, knowing how people are already hostile, and you weak and limited, what will you do? You might just fold up and say, "No, I won't do this." Again, what made St. Paul continue? What sustained him in his mission? Knowing that he was weak and knowing that he would encounter a lot of difficulties. The same thing that sustained Ezekiel, faith in God. While he recognizes his own limitations and the difficulties that he would confront, one thing that he could not deny was that God called him in Jesus Christ. He was chosen by the risen Lord. He believes in the risen Lord. And because of this faith, he will give himself. And because of faith, he found the meaning in his weakness. In his weakness, he will not be proud. he will rely on the strength that comes from Jesus Christ. So, his weakness is not a liability. It can even be an asset. For if he had no defects at all, then he might be tempted to preach himself rather than preach Christ. He might be tempted to rely on his own prowess, on his own ability, and deny the power of Christ. But because of his limitations, he knows he needs Christ, and it is only the power and the word of Christ that make him truly an apostle. What faith! What purity in mission! This is another challenge to us. If Ezekiel has already challenged us, we have another surprise in St. Paul. A weak person, surprisingly chosen by God, and what a story of faith and mission he has left to us.